those of you participating in our Stitch Pink with Moda here at Prairie Point, I got some tips for you on making these blocks. Now, just to remind you, a block pattern is available every day for the month of October. So we're on day 8, block 8 right now, but I have 5 blocks here in front of me. So just as for some quick tips for making flying geese units, there's flying geese units in here, 2 different colorways, and then this block here has 2 different sizes of flying geese units in it. And then we also have half square triangles here, lots of half square triangles, and half square triangles here in the corners. Now the patterns are designed to be, the cut measurements are the exact sizes, so there's no squaring up after you put them together. But I'm going to show you some ways to square them up. Now I'm going to begin with the half square triangles. So if your pattern calls for a 2-inch finished half square triangle, instead of cutting your squares 2 7/8 and cutting the triangles diagonally, just cut them 3 inches. That extra 1/8 of an inch gives you some wiggle room for squaring up your block units when you're done. So put those together and then get out your ruler and square those up. Now the tricky one is the flying geese. So it's actually not real tricky, but you do need to know some different measurements. So don't go cutting out all your pieces and then decide you want to use this method. I'm going to show you using the fast flying geese method. So in this particular case here, we have the larger triangle. You start out with a large square like this. It's bigger than the square they say in the pattern, because they have you tell you to cut it square, cut it diagonally twice for 4. That will be the exact size. We're going to cut it a little bit bigger. I'll give you the measurements in a few minutes. And then you have 4 smaller triangles that are also larger. So I got those 4 here. We're going to start out. To begin making these with the fast flying geese method, you're going to cut out your larger square according to the measurements I will give you, and I'll give those to you pretty soon. You're going to lay your smaller squares on here, just like that. You've already drawn the line on there, and you're going to sew a 1/4 inch on each side of the line. So when you do that, it's going to look like this. All right? Then you're going to take that, let's say that's still together. You're going to take your rotary cutter and ruler, cut right down the middle, and you have 2 units here. So you're going to go to the iron, press these towards the small triangles. Do that to both of them. And once that is completed, you'll have these. You're going to take a 1/3 square. We've only used 2 squares so far. You'll take a 1/3 square, preferably matching, but if that's your design to have it different, that's fine too. Okay, then you're going to sew a 1/4 inch on each side of this drawn line. And you'll do that to both of them. Let's see, that's going to go on there. All right. And they'll look like this. Okay, so you'll have these 2. You're going to get 4 flying geese out of all this. So I'm going to take my rotary cutter and ruler, cut that down the middle, and press that to the side, and again we have 4 flying geese. All right. Once that is pressed, then you will take all of your flying geese units and ready to square them up. And see how they're not very neat around the edges. You have an extra space here for seam allowance. They have these little dog tails sticking out, and it's really not perfectly square. But I'm going to show you a few different techniques for doing that. Okay, one of them is the Ultimate Flying Geese ruler from Creative Grids. And it will make up to 4 by 8 inch flying geese, which is pretty large. You'll probably use the smaller ones most often. For this one, we're going to make a 2 by 4 inch finished flying geese unit. It's 2.5 by 4.5 unfinished. So I'm going to put this on here. I'm going to look for the markings on here that say 2 by 4. Ultimate Flying Geese ruler uses the finished measurements on here. So we're going to look for the one that says 2 by 4. Lay that on there. There's a dashed line and it says D right here. We're going to trim those two sides. I'm going to make this in a more convenient position. Trim these two sides. And then going to turn this around and come to the other side of the ruler. We'll turn it around as well. We're going to look for the rectangle that says 2 by 4. Okay, going to lay that 2 by 4 inch rectangle on there on my two lines that I just cut. Again, I'm going to check to make sure that the diagonal line is right on the seam line and that the corners of my ruler and the lines go right along the seam line so that the seam line meets right at the corner. And you have a nice little 2 inch by 4 inch finished, 2.5 by 4.5 unfinished flying geese unit. It's perfectly sized. It will fit into anything you match it up to that's already cut that size. I'm going to do that one more time. Okay, if you're going to cut out several of these and you don't want to have to search for your markings each time, you can take something like these G-Easy stickers and pull off one of these little things. And I'm going to put it right there where it says D, so that when I pick this up again and put it down, I know that's where it is right away. Sure makes it convenient. Okay, I'll get that on there. Position it where I can cut it. My diagonal lines are right on the seam line. Turn this around. Go to the other side of the ruler. Put these two lines of the rectangle on my cut lines. Trim it up again. And there we go. Okay. Now, if you have the wing clipper ruler from Studio 180, one of Deb Tucker's designs, this will work too. So you're going to take your pressed flying geese unit and you're going to look on here for the size that you want to make. And actually what I do is just put this on here to see which of these little X's is going to fit into the seam line here where these come together and still leave room for me to cut all around. If I put it over here, it's not going to allow me to cut. It's going to give me way too much room here. I can't cut over there. If I go the opposite way, I can't cut it off over here. Right here where it says 2.5 inches for my 2.5 by 4.5 inch unfinished. She also uses the unfinished measurements. My corners are right on the seam lines, and I'm going to cut those off. I'm going to turn it around and put the same thing on there, except I'm not worrying about the X's this time. Those lines are going to go right on the cuts that I just made, 2.5 by 4.5 inches. Okay, these little stickers work wonderfully for this too. I could put that right there on the X that I'm going to place in there each time, and I don't have to fiddle around and see where I'm going to put it. Okay, one more method is the block lock flying geese ruler. Okay, this one comes in many different sizes. This ruler will only make a 2 by 4 inch finished flying geese unit. So I will put that on here. This little thing has grooves on the back that will lock into your seams, because your seams, when you press them to one side, then there's a hill and a valley here. So that's going to fit right into the valley and lock up against the hill, and it'll stay right in there like that. It's not going to go anywhere, okay? So you don't need to worry about it sliding around. Okay, again, these are good if you sewed straight and not wavy. Then your corners are naturally going to come right to your seam line here. That's right up there. Just going to cut this, Turn it around. Cut the other two sides. And again, a perfect Flying Geese unit. Now, if you want a smaller one or a larger one, you buy a different ruler. The Wing Clipper and the Ultimate Flying Geese both make several sizes, but they don't have the lock on the back. Just depends on your personal preference, how many you want to make. If I was going to make a couple hundred of them, I'd probably go with this one because I can just put those down there, shove it in there real quick, cut it out, and move on to the next one. But I do like these very well too. Your block lock ruler does not come with measurements for the Fast Flying Geese method. It has measurements in here on how big to cut your rectangles and squares the traditional way, which is what a lot of patterns will have you do. But they're oversized, okay? They're a different size than what your pattern will say. But the measurements are in here, so you can just find the size that you want to make and follow that. However, you can do the Fast Flying Geese method with that. And what I've given you here is some cutting measurements for cutting out the large square and the smaller squares. So that would be these here, all right? For the Stitch Pink blocks, you'll have a 3x6 inch one. I'll tell you to cut out what size large square and small square. I'm not going to tell you here because you can look it up. It'd be hard to remember it here. For the 1.5x3 inch finished, measurements for that, the 2x4 inch finished. So there's 3 different sizes between those 2 blocks. On our Stitch Pink website, under one of the videos, there's a little link to this sheet of paper that you can download, print it off if you want, and it will give you the measurements for these blocks, not for all blocks available. That would be a different page. Also on there is the cutting and sewing requirements and measurements for the quarter square triangles that we did in block 1. So I kind of briefly went over that in another video, but if you would like the measurements, you'll find those on here as well. Okay, so to finish up, I will be doing some more videos for you, not every day. I've got 5 of them here, and I hope that covers it, but we'll keep you posted. You can go to Prairie Point Sew Along with Susan on Facebook, and we will update you there on what new videos we have out and how we're coming along, and you can go there to post pictures of your blocks that you're putting on there after you request to be a member of the group. So hope you enjoyed this, and we'll let you know when we do it again. Thank you.